Next up, I have pooled time with Mohamed Kuziez.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Dr. Mohamed Kuziez. I'm a local pediatrician here in Colorado and advocate for ending this genocide that's happening in Gaza. I've been gaslit by so many politicians, been told I don't know what's actually going on the ground, and so I did what no one else has seemed to be able to do. I used my privilege as a healthcare physician to actually go to Gaza and to treat the children there and to take care of the patients there as best I could in the face of this horror. During my time in Gaza, one thing became very prevalent, which is an assault on healthcare facilities as an assault on life. This is actually the first hospital we went into in Gaza. This is the dialysis center at Nasser Hospital. And if you guys know anything about patients on dialysis, they have to get dialysis sessions 2 to 3 hours every other day roughly in a week. So they're doing 3 to 4 sessions. This is a center not for fighters. This is a center for the population. You can see it has not been shelled. It has not been shot with bullets. It has been deliberately set on fire. In front, you can also see ambulances that were deliberately destroyed to further hurt the people of Gaza. On our way, we actually managed to go to the north of Gaza. This is us crossing the Netzarim corridor. In the distance, there's actually a body decaying on the floor because no one else was allowed to cross into the north of Gaza except for ourselves because we had prior coordination with the IDF. This is the outside of the hospital I worked at, or one of the hospitals I worked at in the north. This is the Patient Friends Benevolent Society Hospital. It is the only functioning children's hospital in North Gaza, the only place that has a pediatric ICU. If you look, this is what this hospital looked like in February of last year. This hospital was lit on fire and shelled as well. Again, I remind you, this is a children's hospital. Frequently, when we would be working in the hospital, power would get cut. Our patients depended on oxygen cylinders for survival. I don't know if you guys know this because it's not something I realized working in the U.S., but most hospitals have oxygen concentrators. In all of North Gaza, there is one remaining oxygen concentrator. The remaining hospitals would go and fill up tanks daily, and roughly every hour, 2 hours, an alarm would go off in the hospital. Somebody would have to go down and hot swap the tank so patients don't suffocate. This is the Shifa Hospital. Shifa Hospital was the beating heart of Gaza. Shifa Hospital was about the size of Anschutz. Shifa Hospital had in excess of 950 patient beds, was the primary surgical hospital, the primary maternal fetal hospital, the primary NICU center in Gaza in general. And it was just utterly ravaged in a deliberate attempt to rob Palestinians of life. This is what the inside of a Shifa hospital looks like. You can see it has been destroyed. It has been lit on fire to make sure that it can never be used again. This is the war in Palestine is not just against the infrastructure, but directly against the people in Palestine. And unfortunately, the victims are most frequently children. What I passed to Mr. Rob over there is actually a piece of shrapnel about the size of a quarter that we pulled out from this 3-year-old child. This child had to have his spleen removed, his pancreas, part of his large intestine, and part of his small intestine due to something about the size of a quarter. That thing weighs about 15 grams, yet our government repeatedly approves funding and weapons packages to Israel with bombs that weigh 2,000 pounds. How many pieces of shrapnel like that are in one of those bombs? This child is one of the hardest patients I've ever had to deal with. This is a child who unfortunately suffered a small piece of shrapnel that went into their brain. We were working without pediatric neurosurgery in the north of Gaza, and so I had to walk away from this child knowing that he could have survived if he had had the same access to care that any other child in this world deserves. This is Habib al-Askey. Even when patients are not directly attacked, the deliberate destruction of healthcare infrastructure and making things difficult affects patients. This is the patient who developed something called the protein C deficiency, and so her blood would literally clot within her veins. She needed a medication that's easily accessible outside of Gaza. We were unable to evacuate this child from the north of Gaza for about a week and a half, and then from the south of Gaza for about another 2 weeks. Ultimately, Habiba would finally get evacuated to Jordan and went on to have a triple amputation of both arms and one of her legs. Even when the children's bodies are fine, there is an assault on their mental well-being. This is Farha. Farha means joy. She's a 9-year-old Palestinian girl who I was handing out stickers to in the Baptist hospital. While I was handing out stickers, she asked if we could go put stickers on her friend's grave. And so I walked over with this child and put frozen stickers on another child's grave, because even as a pediatrician trained in the U.S., I did not know how to respond to a 9-year-old child asking me if they can go and make their friend's grave beautiful. Despite all odds, there is still hope in Gaza. These are buildings within Gaza City. There are people living in them. While they may not pass an engineering inspection, there are lives in Gaza, in these buildings, that deserve to be protected. This is the UNRWA schools that are frequently bombed, that are frequently targeted, and you can see that they have been turned into housing and sheltering for refugees in Gaza, full of children. And so bombing one of these schools, you destroy hundreds of lives. This is the day that the ceasefire went into effect, because I was there back in January, and so we were able to finally go up high on the buildings and look and see. And so Gaza is a mix of refugee camps, of people struggling, of absolute destruction, and still some hope. We were trying to get to the north, trying to get to the far north in Gaza, and this was actually a caravan of people who, the first day of the ceasefire, they went to the north in an attempt to find their homes, only to find that everything was completely destroyed and erased, and actually came back to the tents that they had left that same day. We went to the Kamal Adwan Hospital in the north. Kamal Adwan is another children's hospital that had been lit on fire. Here I am digging through the ashes and the remnants to try and find supplies for the hospital we were working at. If you look, you can see cribs. Again, over here, another general hospital. The pediatric ward has been utterly destroyed. This is the Indonesian hospital. The Indonesian hospital was also attacked, sieged, and actually occupied by the IDF for the longest time because of its strategic viewpoint. So instead of being a hospital, place of healing, it was turned into a place of death. This is the inside of the Indonesian hospital, where you can see bullet holes through the wall. This is a picture of a CT of a child who was 8 months old, who had received shrapnel through the brain, who we were unable to fix, and so she ended up developing seizures and permanent neurological disability, but she also received shrapnel through her neck that destroyed her trachea and her esophagus. And so in planning for surgery, we wanted to go get a CT. The problem is the CT is in a separate hospital. It's not in the same hospital as the children's hospital. So we had to load this kid up, who was on a ventilator with an oxygen tank, and try and struggle just to get her the care, the basic care that she could get anywhere else. This is the same child's father, who had lost his wife and his 4-year-old kid, singing to this kid and kissing her and combing her hair, because we had told him that she needed to go back to the OR. Too often there is a demonization of bodies like my own, brown and black bodies, in the media, that we don't care. The people of Gaza care about their kids. They've just had to learn to let them go. Even for kids who survive, the war continues. This is a 12-year-old boy who had his spinal cord destroyed by a piece of shrapnel and now lives in the hospital because there is no power at home for him to be able to have a ventilator. And so his only option is living in this hospital that has already been bombed and sieged twice in the past. But despite all odds, there's still hope in Gaza. These are kids at school learning English. And if you look, you notice the kids are all different ages, because they've all been out of school for different lengths of time, and now they're just trying their best to resume some degree of normalcy. I did peds because kids have an amazing ability to be joyous anywhere in the world, despite everything that's going on. And so these kids over here turned down power lines into a swing. And this is Habiba after her surgery. I understand that it can be hard to see these images, that we can feel like it's hopeless, but I'm here to argue that there is still life in Gaza, that there are still people in Gaza that we have an obligation to defend, that we have an obligation to do everything we can for. I went to Gaza. I risked my own life, my own safety, all in the hopes that I could try and help one child. And thankfully, I had the opportunity to help many more. And I know you guys combined together can put in that effort and make a difference. In closing, I want to dedicate this to my friend Mahmoud Abu Nuwai, who last week, he was a medical graduate. Last week he was on the way to the Indonesian hospital I showed you. He was in a taxi with people he didn't know, and one of those people was on an Israeli hit list, and so they blew up the taxi and he lost his life. This is a man who had spent 600 days fighting to save his people in Gaza. Despite everything, he was still killed. And then this is actually a picture of one of the hospitals I worked at, the Baptist Hospital. This is the emergency room. This hospital was the lifeblood of the north of Gaza because this is where all the mass casualty events are staged. So at this hospital, 40, 50 people would show up all at once in various stages of injury, and we would try and fix them, decide who could survive with our care and who couldn't, and begin care from there. This is a picture of me in that same ED 3 months back. It has to stop, and I really appreciate the council doing whatever they can. If anybody's interested, I actually brought the piece of shrapnel with me as well if you guys would like to see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. You guys, please, I know you know the rules. I did not say this at the start, but we do ask that we not do any applause or audible support and or discord for any speakers. Thank you very much for understanding.
Thank you. I was just going to thank our speakers, our guests for coming up and providing public comment. It's always helpful to hear what's on people's minds and to think about, what steps we can be taking to be a positive influence in the community. So I just appreciate you coming out, sharing your photos, your video, all that stuff. And I'll leave it at that for now, but thanks.
I would just say one final thing. I want to echo what Councilor LeBeer said. Thank you for the folks who came and spoke. Thank you for your comments. We really do listen closely each time to the doctor who risked his life to care for others. Thank you for your testimony and for doing that and for your bravery. I guess all I would say is at a moment when I certainly am very worried about the state of our democracy and the state of our rights based on some of what the new administration is doing at the federal level, and I think those fears are very, very valid. I'm heartened that folks continue to come to this chamber and speak out and exercise their right to free speech. I think that I think we have cause to be worried about that in the country right now, and I think it's really important that people continue to come and speak. And I encourage you to reach out at any time.
I do want to say thank you for the persistence and advocacy of our community, both on the persistent war and genocide in Gaza and the ability to really continue with your advocacy despite it feeling hopeless and like folks aren't listening. I think is very impressive, and it's really important. And we're glad to see you here. I'm glad to see you here.
And did just want to double down on the thanks to Dr. Kuziez and to all the folks coming to continue to discuss the ongoing genocide in Gaza. I think you had come to speak to us before on this, Dr. Kuziez, and I know in going and risking your life in that mission, you were also held in the Strip for a while, and a lot of us were watching that. And so I think that that was a precursor, that was a different administration, but I think speaks to the continued challenges with folks' rights to move freely across our world and in our country. And so I think that concern only continues to grow. And so thank you all for your advocacy and for continuing to show the real human cost of what our tax dollars are and are not funding.
I also would like to echo thanks, just briefly, thanks to those that spoke in public comment.
Dr. Kuziez, beyond gratitude for all that you do for this community and globally. So thank you for that.
I have a number of things, and not the least of which, thank you very much for bringing in your message this evening.